You know what I find is interesting? We channel, and
Yeah.
I have an idea of what we've said, you know, because I've actually sat here and said the words. But what's funny is when the episode actually comes out, it's something that I can apply to what I need in that moment.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I noticed that just watching that show, the last show, a couple of shows ago. I watched this afternoon, and I was picking up stuff in it, and I was like, wow, that's really profound. I could use that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we sit here after the show and we say, you know something, that's really good advice that we came through with. So we want to tell people to, a lot of the stuff that comes through, this is coming through spirit and through us, because we're all channelers anyway. So I mean, some of it's our opinion, obviously, or our experiences, but
Sometimes we intentionally play off each other to promote more conversation. You know?
Well, yeah, because we also want to take it from different perspectives, because our viewers are have different perspectives.
Exactly.
But some of it comes right from spirit. So those are kind of like little pieces of gem that are there. And I noticed you just a little while ago saying something, and it's like, I think she's channeling this, because this is just like a real piece of good information.
Yeah.
And you'll pick it up when you watch the show.
Yeah, I will, totally.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, it's almost like, this is how amazing Spirit is. It's like they give us the information to talk about, but yet it's going to be so much more beneficial and apply so much when it actually comes out.
Yeah.
You know? And I have to say, I think one of the key things you said was, this helps if you listen to things on like repeat. Like, so sometimes, you know, maybe a good idea is to go back and re-look at episodes, like, and things, because I really feel like this information, just like when I do my readings, I feel like it all comes in layers.
Yeah.
And again, that's another reason why I record it, because when people go back, they can take the information and they apply it in another area of their life. And, you know, Spirit comes in so many layers, kind of just like the Bible or A Course in Miracles, like, or, you know, even the books that are out there, like The Power of Now and The New Earth, and those things are like eternal. Like every time you read them, you'll get something different from it.
Right.
Right.
That's why some people will reread certain
That's when
books.
you know really good spiritual stuff.
When I'm writing my books and channeling the books and stuff like that, I can tell certain parts are being written for certain groups of people, and then I might say it differently that I know will be going to another group of people. Like the book I wrote on for veterans, Always Connected for Veterans. I could tell what group of veterans this information was being brought to, and that it would affect this particular group more so than this other group. And it's interesting how Spirit was working that way, and how they moved things around and moved words around so that they knew whoever was reading the book, it could help both.
Yeah.
As opposed to being just like, you know, bland and just shooting it right down the middle of the lane.
Isn't it funny? They don't waste energy.
No, right.
Like they
They're very
capitalize
efficient.
on now and like forward
Yeah.
and utilize things and information that can be used like
In the future.
I have to say, like, the universe isn't trendy. Like they don't give you stuff that's like you know, like the capes that people used to wear and like these trendy things that are only in for a season. It's like they give you information that's going to last long periods of time. And I think that's
It's
kinda
I
wild,
actually mentioned that in
amazing.
the book, that some of the information that I was given is for soldiers and family of military families that haven't even been born yet.
Wow.
They'll be used in future conflicts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's kind of a growth in that book, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Like you just said, how they can do that, which is great, because you know it's like a living work. Then it's an ongoing thing.
It makes me think, like, sometimes I feel like, you know, I really get the universe. I get God. I totally see it, and he's so good. And then something happens, and then I'm like, I know nothing. I'm just a baby. I don't know anything. You know, it's like you have these glimmers of these clarity, and then the next thing something happens, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, Spirit. But again, it's just how complex and amazing the energy is. It's like we get these glimpses and these glimmers which fuel energy forward, and then you're now in a new space. So like you said, it's kind of like shedding your skin and like reinventing yourself, and like, okay, now who am I in this space?
And you relearn it.
And then you learn it and you go through, and then you're like, okay, now who am I in this space?
I just had it the other day, the exact same thing. I'm like, I don't know anything about this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just because it's like, and then all of a sudden you get these little snippets, you know, and they're golden.
And you're like,
and,
I get it.
and it was like,
and the key is you have to get to that point where you realize you don't understand something for that information to come through. Like I've been getting a lot of information about the soul before, and I used to, I grew up Episcopal, so I had the idea that the soul is just the non-physical me that's just like me, but just comes into this to experience the body and then leaves. And now I'm getting all this stuff about how the soul is not anything that I thought of. It's not. It's not like an entity unto itself necessarily. It's more like that sea of consciousness with different parts flowing in. And I define it as I live my life and choose from the different energies. But I never could have gotten that if I didn't get to that point, like you said, where it's like, I think both of you said, where you realize, I don't know anything about this. And then as soon as you do that, it's almost like instantly you start getting information.
You're like, oh, wait a minute, I do get it. I'm getting more clarity.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's true. And that's the thing is, like, we got to realize is there are layers. Like, you got to learn. And I feel like in the spiritual process that I've taken, and I see new people coming in and wanting to start businesses and wanting to, and I see them going through and doing the same things that I did, maybe mistakes and things like that, where before I might have jumped in and saying, oh, wait a minute, you need to, or, oh, don't do. And now I'm realizing that I can support them and I can teach them and inspire them, but they ultimately need to have those experiences in order to learn, in order to grow. And if somebody's constantly jumping in, diverting it for them, they're going to get used to that. And then when they come to these challenges, they're not going to be able to grow. And I'm sure you can apply that.
What do I do now?
Yeah. And I'm sure they can apply that in every area, not just business, but even like how I raise my kids or, how I am in my relationship or how, I am with friends or my job or, I think it's important to have experiences, but give yourself room to make mistakes. It's not failures. We have success and we have learning experiences. There really is no failure because there's always something that
growth.
comes from it,
Failures are growth because you're moving forward. If you don't have any failures,
and I think
you're stagnant.
I think that's a valuable part of learning is messing up or not getting it right or
and accepting how important growth and change is.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is really interesting, and I think a lot of old school people would have a problem with our church is, we started the First Spiritualist Church of Rhode Island, shameless promotion, ding. We started it based very similar to other spiritualist churches, but we played, a more upbeat music and stuff. But one of the things we promote now with mediums is that if you're getting a message and you're having problems placing it, give the message anyway, because the efficiency of spirit is one that, it's a lot of other spiritualist churches might have, 20 or 30 people in the room. Well, now we're bringing in 100 every week.
Absolutely.
So spirit's
That's a lot
like,
of energy.
It's not good enough to give 3 messages to people, so we're going to give messages that apply to
everybody,
numerous people at a time. And
I find that's when I do my readings at the church, and I always say they're going to piggyback.
Yeah.
So when I reach somebody, the information can definitely apply to many different
I think
people.
that's what I said the last time I did a
Definitely.
service was I said, listen, because they will kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, or 10 birds with one stone.
Yeah, because they're great at it. They'll send out the same message to 4 or 5 different people. Even though one person might be getting the reading, there's a reason why that particular reading's coming through on that particular day. Because there's 4 or 5 people that are wondering about something in that reading.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really credit Ernie with, is pushing with mediums like look, if you're giving information and 4 people can connect to it, and you've been giving information for 5 minutes, he's like, just give the message.
Yeah.
And you might find you might give the message, then you might, I might give one to you, and then look at Joe and say, it's similar to this, but I feel like you need to do this, and oh, it's similar to this, but you need to do that, but realizing that, consciousness, the sea of consciousness, it's efficient and it knows what it's doing. It's not, there's no chance, there's no haphazardness, that it's actually very.
And it's those experiences that have allowed me to trust even further. Do you know what I mean? And not resist in that sense. You know, I mean, I think I resist with like the human part of me, but when it comes to spirit and messages and guidance, like there's no resistance, because again, I see after experience how wise and smart, even though I look up at God saying, it's not fair, I know that there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to understand why that didn't work out or why that didn't happen. And it's just giving myself space and time to process it.
Now, do you have ever, because you both do readings as part of your living, and do you ever have those moments where you're giving a message to somebody and they keep saying, no, that's not right, but you know that it's right, and what people aren't understanding is that the the way source energy, spirit, whoever's coming through sees them isn't how they see themselves.
Yes.
And so they're saying, no, no, no,
Yes.
that's not it. And you keep feeling like, that's it.
Yeah.
I know this is
I've
it.
actually had experiences where, and I love when people come with somebody, or they've come with like I just had a mom and two daughters.
They're saying
and
no, and the other person's like,
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I had mentioned this guy about being stressed, and he's saying, no, I don't feel stressed, and his friend that he brought was like, oh yeah, he's stressed. And when I realized that he's lived with this stress for so long, he doesn't even realize it's toxic for himself.
he doesn't acknowledge it as an issue.
Yeah,
If
and I
I-
have to say, we've talked about that, and I think it can be very draining for us.
It is.
Because we know what the message is, and we can't necessarily move on. So now what I say is like, okay, well, it's on the recording. It may be something that might come to you afterwards. I remember one lady, I was saying the word rose over and over and again, and she was like, oh, okay. She ended up emailing me later that night, and she realized, like, Rose was a name within her family. Her daughter's middle name was Rose. The grandmother's name was Rose. Like, there was all this Rose. But again, they don't.
She wasn't in the headspace to accept it.
Right,
It wasn't-
because they're overwhelmed with all the information. That you don't realize, like, when you get this information, it's like it's kind of like a shock a little bit, because you're like, God, how does this person know so much? Or I wasn't expecting that, or this is the information that helps. So I, as a medium, have realized that sometimes the information can be overwhelming, especially when you don't know what to expect, or you came in for one thing and something else comes up. And so I've learned to be able to just nurture that part, right? But it's definitely an experience.
Yeah, usually if they tell me something like twice, I bring it back to them. I said, no, they told me twice. You really need to kind of figure it out. If they tell me a third time, the reading actually kind of stops. And I said, we got to figure this out. They're pushing it 3
Because
times.
it can be very draining for us.
Well, yeah, because it's really important for them to come through with this information,
Yeah.
because it's going to hold up everything else. If someone truly does not understand it and they're open, then we'll say, okay, we're going to write it down, take it home, think about it. It's very important. It's going to be a huge bell ringer, believe me.
Yeah.
If they do it 3 times. If they're not willing to do that, then there's other things going on in the reading that can pretty much stop that. They'll stop it sometimes if someone not willing to accept it. They know what it is. They don't want to admit it. Certain things, like I've had that.
True. That's true.
I've had that with an abuse case, when the lady kept on saying no, no, no. I don't know this person, and then finally she admitted it a half hour later. The third time when it stopped, it was her mother coming through who wanted to apologize for abusing her.
And this
And
is
then
where,
once that happened, it was like the fire hose just opened up, and this information just came pouring through. But it stopped. It wouldn't happen until that lady admitted that, okay, I know what it is. I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to tell them what it is.
Yeah.
And this is where our confidence as a medium and our confidence in the energy that works with us is so important. Because as an intuitive, we were talking earlier about this is what we do isn't concrete, right? It's not like words that are written somewhere. Like, this is something that's coming to us. Like, and so our trust and our faith in the gift that we have and the information that's coming and the guys that work with us
Right,
are
experience.
huge, right? Because you get somebody who's saying no, but inside. And again, there's a difference between an ego thing, like an ego, I'm right, and this message that's like, this is divine. Like,
just
this
a
is
knowing.
This
Yeah.
exactly, and there's just this knowing. Where I have to say, if I keep trying, I get very tired after. I get very wiped. So now, like I said, I can guide it in a way where eventually maybe it comes out in a different way. Because remember, spirit speaks in the way that they're going to speak, but it's not a way that that person may understand, right? Where you get a characteristic. I get a characteristic of someone, and they'll say, oh no, blah blah blah, but I realize that, gosh, they didn't see them like that. This is how the spirits saw themselves, but that person didn't see them like that. So then I'll say, well, this is how they have saw themselves in this lifetime, and then it makes sense. So it's a matter of just kind of like sorting things out
Yeah,
and
I
getting
mean-
clarity and working with, as opposed to like, this is the message and the person saying, yep, nope, yep. It becomes more of a conversation.
That's where it's really important, is to educate the person getting the reading, because they've read so many different things. Don't feed the medium, don't do this, don't do that. And people come in there really closed. It's hard enough having someone that's wide open and accepting of the possibilities of these things, because we forget things. I get a reading and I'm like, no, I'll write it down, but I can't remember it right now. And like, an hour later or the next day, I'm like, oh my God, I should have known that. I mean, it happens to us.
Yeah.
So to someone that's new at it, we can understand that.
Yeah.
So, but people come in with the no negativity and stuff like that.
I stopped
an
the
easy-
reading.
yeah,
At
that's
that
an easy way to
point,
shut
if
it down.
I get that energy where people are being like basically abusive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're being
Like
difficult or
testers. Yeah.
challenging or testing. I'm like, we have to stop, because I know for me, I'll get wiped out and it's not fair.
Yeah.
But I also understand it too, because there's so many messy mediums that we talked about. That's one of our shows,
Right.
shameless plug. But I get that. So I'm not just completely dismissive, but again, there has to be some degree of opening. They don't have to tell me anything. They don't have to give me anything, but there's got to be some intention,
Yeah.
right? And why are you here? Like, what are you struggling with? You don't even have to say it. Bring it in your energy
Yeah.
so that we're aware of it. I find it's harder to do readings on people who are like, I'm just here just because I'm here.
Yeah, just
you
tell
know?
me, tell me what you have to say.
Right? And then things come up and they're like, nope. And I'm thinking, because they don't have an intention. This is the information that Spirit says they need to hear,
Yep.
but they have no intention. And they're like,
Because
well, I
Spirit
don't
wants to
know.
make sure that they're serious.
Yeah.
And I've seen that come through. It's like they will try and try, but when they realize that other person is shutting down and they don't care, or it's a test,
They're not going to waste the energy.
no, because they're not going to waste their energy, right? And they'll shut down before I'll shut down.
Yeah.
They'll say it's over.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
you also do get people who nothing you say is ever enough.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to be aware of that too. Like, I've had many, many times where it's like I've given information, and I've shared information, and then like they've come like up later, like let's say if I'm speaking or something, they'll come up and say, well, what else more do you have for me?
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
like, what do you mean what else? Like, you
Right.
just got all this information. Like, you got to start there. But
And Spirit doesn't like that either. They don't have to like.
because they can get greedy, right? Because
and
now
they
they're
feel
not
like they're being.
listening.
Spirit feels like they're being tested. It's like we've
Yes,
given you all
yes.
this, and now this is one that really ticks them off. Is like, what is the name of my dog that passed, or what's the name of my best friend that passed? And Spirit will actually say, we're not going to give it to you because you're testing us. And all the fact that we brought through all this other information that
Yeah.
you agreed that it's your mom or
Yeah.
your sister-in-law or whatever like that. You already know what it is, but you want more because you want to test us. You think you're testing the medium, but
Yeah.
you're actually testing spirit.
The
And
thing
they'll
that-
shut down and they'll say, no, we're not going to give you that name.
The thing that people don't realize is not all mediums are going to get names.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a feeling and knowing
And I
kind of
think
medium.
that comes
so
from
I
a,
get
um,
TV
individual,
and
but I think it comes from individual belief systems and comfort
Definitely.
zones, and like for
Right.
me, it's in our heads we feel like it's harder to get a name, but
Yeah.
it's easier to get a description about the person. So that's how it manifests
Yeah.
for me.
But sometimes
I don't
the
ask for
spirit,
'em because
no,
I-
but sometimes the spirit, that's how they're communicating. Like, that's their capacity and the energy on the other side to give the information. And like you're saying, if the person wants more and that's not enough, it gets to the point where it's like,
and they don't really communicate. People don't understand that they don't really communicate with words. It's concepts,
energy. Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so
Through memories or thoughts or pictures.
A name's a word. So if they can't find an easy way to project a
A
thought
word,
feeling
yeah.
that would bring you to that word, they're not going to waste their time, because I'm not going to pick up on George unless they can project like Curious George to me, and then I would think, oh,
Absolutely.
George.
Right.
So because what's a thought bubble that represents George without words, just a feeling.
Exactly. Would you rather hear?
You can't get that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
right.
And a lot of times, we go to school with people for 5, 8 years or something like that. And we haven't seen them in 10, 15. What was his, you forget your friend's name.
Yeah.
Names aren't really necessarily important over there, but who they were. If I have a guy who comes through and he's on a biker, and he's a big tough guy, but he's also sewing,
Yeah.
and that's a friend of yours that was a biker, but he also liked to sew because it was something that was good for his stress, and he got a kick out of it. I mean, that's a home run. I mean, I don't have to say, oh, I got Bill here,
Yeah.
because you know who he is.
Yeah.
But
And I
some
would
people
bet-
will say, I want the name, I want the name. I will not accept that unless you give me the name.
And I bet you that a lot
Now
of the
that's
mediums.
being a bully.
No,
But
and
I think
they
a-
get ticked on the other side because it's like, no, we've given you enough. You've accepted it, but now you're being a bully. Now you want to control this beautiful sacred moment of actually
Well, that's
having
actually their ego that wants
but
to.
what I'm saying is, it's a moment where you're actually exposed to like answers of the mysterious universe since the beginning of man. You're realizing you're talking to someone that's passed away. Life is continuous, but now all of a sudden you want
And
more.
I wish more people would respect the energy as such, that it's sacred and
And, you know,
know,
some
so
people,
many
and some people
people-
get. I've had people that give one thing to them. That's it. They start crying like, I don't need any more. I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
And they get the whole concept. And other people, like you say, I've had people like, all right, I want the pet stuff. So I give them the pet stuff. And then you give them another pet. No, more. So I give them another pet. And now I'm saying to myself, what do you live on a farm? Or something like that. You know, it turns out the person that had passed, the child, something like that, had like 7 different pets.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I brought through the rabbit, the
Yeah.
dog, and the parakeet, which
Yeah.
is a story. And
Well,
but they wanted
sometimes-
more. They wanted the guinea pig's name. I'm like, really?
Sometimes
Really?
I'll tell people, like, sometimes spirit comes in, sometimes we have to bring them in, and that's just the way it is. Because again, they could have reservations to, like, the person coming in. They might want to hear from them, but deep down they may not. They may
Yeah.
be fearful of it. So sometimes we have to call them in, and spirit's going to expect, you know, respect, like, the free will.
Now, what about this as a concept too? So let's apply law of attraction to mediumship. So now if I'm coming in to test you and you're just open to receive whatever comes through. So you're without judgment. So you're open to receive and so you're ready to give. Basically, you're setting yourself to give whatever I can accept. So now if I'm coming in
Well,
testing,
I'm setting myself to receive.
but you're setting yourself up to
spirit.
receive, but because you're open to whatever comes through and law of attraction is always working, your ability to give them the information they want to
Can
hear
override
is
their-
going to, well, it's going to be limited by what they are allowing.
Well, not really. So, for my intention is to go right up to source,
Yeah.
and there's no waste of energy. So I've had
but
people,
but
who have,
source is law of attraction.
right? But I've had people who have come in that space and have been surprised in how the universe was able to get around that and go right in.
But I think that, again, we don't know what their vibrational point is. So every
But then also,
every night
too,
when they're
I
in
should
bed, they-
reiterate, I probably wouldn't attract that client. It's probably not
Maybe
my
not.
client.
But if
But-
you did have that client and their loved one comes through, I'm going to give them the information. If they don't want to accept it, it's like, this is your opportunity.
Yeah.
And if you say no, or you're testing and you don't like it, you go home.
Yeah.
And I've had clients like that. It's like, you've had the opportunity that millions of people wish they had, and you blew it.
Yeah.
Well, I have had clients who are brand new, like knew they needed something, were resistant to it, and they were my absolute best experiences because there really was no expectations, but they may have come hesitant,
Yeah.
skeptical.
But that's different. That's a
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
What I'm
So what are you
talking
trying to
about
say?
is, so somebody that comes in, basically looking to
trick you.
disprove you.
Ah.
Spirit. It's not necessarily that they're even saying like we're not going to give it to you, but they're basically saying like we can't give it to you because they
Yeah.
can't receive it.
So
They're not in a
chances
place
are-
vibrationally to receive the information. So we're going to give you what they can receive.
So
know,
chances
and-
are I wouldn't attract that.
It's
Probably
something,
not.
Because that's not my vibration is send me clients that I can bless that can
Yeah.
bless me as well,
Yeah.
right? But I have to say there are mediums who probably would just take that in and
Yeah.
get into that space.
Yep.
well, I've
So-
gotten in within 5 minutes, I know what's going on because they tell me.
Yep.
They said, you can actually hear him saying, you know, whatever he's asking for, he's not ready to accept.
Yep.
And they know that they
Oh,
tell you it's a
absolutely.
game
Yeah.
within 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I have to say, I'm also priced a little higher,
Mm-hmm.
where I think,
Yeah, people aren't going to test necessarily for what you're charging, which is smart.
yeah.
Well, which is part of the reasons why you charge a little bit higher. You get people that are more serious.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also 10 years into this too. I have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's a degree of learning. So I guess I can't say that's never happened to me. But at the point that I am now, if we're talking about law of attraction, I probably wouldn't attract that because of
And
the
because
way
you're,
I've moved
and because now
energy.
you're confident of what you're doing and receiving that. But maybe in the beginning,
Yeah. They
when
might
people
come in there
start this-
thinking they're going to do that. As soon
Yeah.
as they sit down, it's like,
Yeah.
that's blown out of the water.
but
you know?
but you know that by them coming in, they're not really necessarily in the space they think they are.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people think they're in one vibrational point and they're
Yeah,
not.
I can't even tell you how many clients I've had this year have come in and said, I don't know why I'm here. I just know I needed to be here. And then it was like an incredible session. So I always say, just show up. Like, don't bring any energy. Just show up. And the Spirit knows they've been with you. They're your guardian angels. They're your guides. They're the archangels, these beings of beautiful energy that's all around you all the time. And they're bringing that in. So I always say the best thing is no expectations. Just come if you feel like you need something.
Exactly.
And
If
be
your
surprised.
intuition's bringing you here, go with it. You've trusted it. It's gonna turn out well.
And that goes with everything in life.
Absolutely.
I think that kind of
That's
goes back
true.
to the point of happiness is
Yeah.
releasing of expectations so that the moment that you're in can express,
Yeah.
I guess, can express the beauty of itself, without you trying to shift it into something that you expected.
Right.
Because
or
you
want it to be.
because we can't even think about the amazing things that can happen. You can't think about all the things that could happen. And if you're so focused on what's not happening, you don't get what is.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point. If you're focusing on what you're expecting instead of letting it go and create it happening on
Allowing it
its
to be
own,
what it is.
you're going to miss the joy and the excitement and the happiness with that.
I tried to micromanage the universe in the beginning of my career, and I learned that that's like hitting a brick wall
You can,
over and over and over again. I thought I was smart. I thought I could get around it, but you cannot micromanage the universe. When you literally surrender, and when I say surrender, it doesn't mean like giving your power away, that this energy has control over you. Surrendering, I guess, the ego part, or the part that is trying to figure everything out. When
Right,
you can
the control
surrender
part.
that energy can flow. It's like, they talk about like paddling upstream, right?
Yep.
That's what I was doing, micromanaging, paddling upstream. The second I just kind of turned the boat around and could float down, it was so much easier. And as a medium, I think that's one of the big things that I've learned is just see myself as a translator. I am a translator in between heaven and earth, and that's my perspective, and I take information that I get and I translate it in a way that the client can understand, and vice versa.
Yep.
And I pull myself out of it as a space of like, hey, I'm just taking information, and
Right.
it's just that's the path of least resistance for me.
Yep.
So that's what works.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
And
Yeah.
that's what I do when I do the classes. I
Yeah.
do when I do the channelings and stuff. And a lot of times, the beginning part where I do the talk is the information coming through from me, and then I open it up to questions so that the information can come through for what they need. But it's always just being open to the moment, and whatever is needed comes through, and that's
Like they say, go with the flow.
yeah,
Love it. Go with the flow.
that's right.
It's a good place to end.
That's it.
That's it.
Yay.
Hi everybody, if you like what you watched, please subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. And check out our website at alwaysconsiderthesource.com.
Hey, if you want us to come out to your location and do a live setup, we'd love to do that. Continue to send in your questions, and we look forward to interacting with you.
And remember, always consider the source.